Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Late Night Learning. I am your host, Dr. Anthony Palumba. Now today we're going to be continuing our discussion on learning and memory. We're going to be in particular going into memory. We're going to be talking about nostalgia a little bit more with memory. We're also going to be talking about memory decay. We're also going to be talking about the brand halo effect and how we're able to transfer our memories of a brand, a well-liked brand, to maybe other initiatives that brand does. So without further ado, let's get started. When we think about memory, we think about things that have really made an impact on us, that resonate with us, that are visceral to us, that are unshakable, inextricable pieces of who we are as people. I really like this photo that I have here. It's very simple and quiet. And I think it forces people to be pensive and to really be contemplative. We can see here we have a ship, just a model ship. Maybe that model ship was made with you and a relative. Close your eyes and just follow me a little bit here as we go down this road. I want you to think about the first time you did something with your grandpa. I don't care which one. The first time you did something with your grandpa. The memory that I'm looking for is a memory in which you built something with him, or you actually did something with him. Maybe you went to the baseball game, or built something, created something, cooked something, saw something. What does that memory feel like to you? How does that memory make you feel? Does that memory make you miss him? Why do you remember this memory? How do you feel after experiencing that memory? You may open up your eyes now. Consider that whatever journey that you just took based on what I was saying was being transported into another time, another plane, even another world. And though the memory itself is not necessarily tangible, you know the experience happened. You know the experience happened. With memory, we remember things that actually happened to us. We remember things that are real to us. We remember things that we touch, we taste, we feel. Video games are not real. Not even close. They're fun, but they're not real. But nevertheless, we remember the first time we beat our brother in Mortal Kombat and got to sleep on the top bunk bed. We remember when we beat one of our friends in Pokemon and got to pick the Pokemon that we wanted out of his card deck. We remember time and time again things that are real and things that are less real. Because really, every experience that we have, whether or not it actually exists in reality, becomes a part of who we are. And so memory is a very, very fascinating subject in video gameplay. Let's keep going. Consumers process knowledge in a very passive manner. You know, if you're sitting in your room right now, never mind the slide in front of you, I want you to take a look around. And I want you to look at everything. I don't need you to think about anything. I just want you to look. How much information did you just process? What a weird thing to think about. We're constantly processing information at a subconscious level. I know that I'm in a 2EV studio right now where the walls appear to be covered with black and green tarp. I know there are chairs here. I know the floor is gray. And I know the stage is carpeted. But I'm not actively thinking about this. And so we are always consuming knowledge. We rely on past experiences to help us make adjustments with knowledge. Sometimes we do this without getting to know the product itself. And so here you can see in this particular image regarding deception, regarding non-conscious procedural knowledge, which is what I'm getting at here, is that sometimes we use symbols that we're familiar with. Sometimes we use pieces of information that we interpret to be the same as previous pieces of information, and we make the wrong conclusion. So here this gentleman is seeing a mop and then a man as a woman. But that's because he's familiar with this particular symbol of a woman perhaps carrying a bag, maybe a shopping bag or maybe a purse, and he's not really going out of his way to learn more. Sometimes we do this when we shop, don't we? We might look at a variety of mops, a variety of shampoos, and say, yeah, shampoo is shampoo. Yeah, I know that, this is meant to really, really help me out if I have fine hair. Yeah, I've seen it before. It's fine. Like, I've seen this on other products. Who cares? And then sometimes we don't really read the fine print regarding one of the shampoos that also offers vitamins and has been tested on humans and has been illustrated to have, properties that really help out people who have fine hair. Advertisements, of course, may be a way to curb this, but we do this in video games, don't we? Sometimes we assume that we know what the power is behind a sword, or we know that another water world in Super Mario is probably like the previous water worlds, and then we're quickly corrected when that water world has surprise volcanoes spewing lava out. We are constantly in a flux, in a sense, rewriting and recoding our memories. And sometimes we seem to think we know what's going to happen based on previous experiences, and it doesn't come to fruition. Something else happens, something else completely different. Let's keep going. Frequency marketing. This type of marketing pushes regular purchasers with prizes as they spend more. Consumers constantly engage with a message. And so this type of marketing pushes prizes as they spend more. The frequency with which you purchase stuff, you'll get more. Consumers are constantly engaged in a message. We see this with Starbucks Gold Card. Do you have a Gold Card? I have a Gold Card. It means I'm in a constant relationship with Starbucks. We see this in video gameplay with freemium games. Who here has played a freemium game? Freemium games can be dangerous. Freemium games force us to consider whether or not we want to purchase items or levels for greater experience. Freemium game developers know only about 10 to 15% of video game players are going to be plunking down $10, $15, even $100 on a freemium game. They're looking for the addicts, so to speak. And I hate to call these people addicts, but when you're plunking down $30, $40, or $50, you quickly become an addict to the game. And so it's always the first initial purchase that's the hardest to do. And then it gets easier, and then all of a sudden, you're $100 into the game. We see this with online games and online scoreboards as well. These are ways in which to continue to have a dialogue with consumers. On the online scoreboard, Michael's not really doing so hot. Neither is David, and neither is Kevin. Those three can now look at their phones, look at their freemium game, and say to themselves, well, it's a freemium game. It's letting me play for free, but do I want to keep going and keep paying to be better than my friends? And that's a decision that is a case-by-case basis. Online games and online scoreboards really open up themselves to wide populations of people. This allows for the big fish, small pond phenomenon to occur in multiple places. And so they're able to group and gather people in a neighborhood, in a section in which everyone is playing the freemium game. Chances are the people who live closest to you, you may know. And video game developers know this. And so these are opportunities for them to really push along frequency marketing and have a constant communication with consumers. Let's keep going. Nostalgia in learning and memory. Nostalgia is an incredible concept. Nostalgia, nosotros, for those of us who speak Spanish, refers to us or we. When we think about algia in any kind of medical dictionary, it usually means pain or some sort of inflammation. And so put together, nostalgia means painful homecoming. Painful homecoming. Nostalgia does insist upon pulling on our heartstrings. When we look at old family photos, when we look at our binkies that we grew up with, when we look at how young our parents were when they first had us, when your dad was helping you learn how to ride a bike. All of these memories occurred when we were first learning how to remember and first learning how to code memories. The first time we do anything is always the most unique to us. Be it sex, be it going on dates, be it purchasing your first house. The first time is always the biggest deal. It's always the biggest deal to us. With nostalgia, nostalgia offers us an opportunity to be transported back to a time that usually was simpler. Life tends to get more complicated, not less. And a time that was good. In our last lecture, remember, we only really recall good things. We may recall some bad things, but we're more inclined to remember the good rather than remembering all of the bad. So when we look at nostalgia, we want to break down what it is that we feel gushy and mushy about, we feel emotional about. There are two ways to kind of look at nostalgia. There's personal nostalgia, considers the intimate bonds and experiences that we have. And then there's historical nostalgia. This takes into consideration trends, culture, and other elements. With personal nostalgia, you may very well remember the first time you blew into a cartridge. With personal nostalgia, you may remember the first time you picked up a handheld console. With personal nostalgia, you may remember the first time you beat your brother in a game of Dr. Mario. With historical nostalgia, you may have nostalgia for times in which you weren't alive. So we may think about things like Red Dead Redemption. We may think about things like other games in which, we've been thrusted into a different world, a different time, someplace in the past. Games that take place in the past, games that take place in prehistoric times. I can think of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in Turtles in Time, in which they're thrown back tens of thousands of years to an age in which dinosaurs ruled the earth. And I can remember playing that video game and saying to myself, "Aw, what do I have to awe about? I wasn't around when dinosaurs were around." But nevertheless, you know it's in the past. You know it's something that is intangible now, but you know it's a simpler time, an easier time, a less stressful time, which is something every college student wishes to be a part of. And so we value things more that we own, more so than things that we don't own. This is absolutely related to video gameplay, because we value the video game consoles that we own, not the ones that we don't own. We value the video game cartridges that still sit in our bookshelf, more so than the video games we wish we owned, or we wish we had, or we wish we made that trade with that friend, or that annoying kid down the street. The endowment effect says that, we place such value on our own objects, more so than others. This creates a stage for perpetual nostalgia development. If we keep the old consoles that we've played, if we keep the old video games that we've played, if we keep pictures of ourselves playing those video games, they're more precious to us than modern consoles. They may be more precious to us than other people's consoles. We may be hesitant to make those trade-offs. They become integrated into the fabric of who we are and our identity. I can remember being 3 years old and playing Atari. I can remember being 3 years old and playing Atari, and then I can remember when I was either 4 or 5, the Atari breaking, and I can still remember my father throwing it out and just being crushed. I wasn't mad at him. I was just mad that it broke. But then I can remember how excited I was to buy Super Nintendo. I can still remember the box in which the Super Mario game came in. And back then you got a booklet full of artwork. And you got to read about the game you were going to play. And it gave you helpful hints. I can remember subscribing to the magazine as well, the Nintendo magazine. It was full of comics and helpful hints about playing video games. It was so colorful and so informative. I felt like I was part of something bigger. That community is kind of lost today. When we really think about what it means to play video games, nostalgia is what brings us together in a lot of ways. That's another element of nostalgia. Everybody grew up experiencing somewhat similar things, although that's less and less true today. But in our childhood, usually, children often experience the same things. As adults, our lives become more complex, and therefore, adults may experience way more different things than other adults. But usually, children tend to have the same experiences. And so nostalgia also serves as a touchstone for all of us to connect on, to be a part of, and to go back to when we feel energy depleted or emotionally depleted and we're looking for a pick-me-up. Nostalgia has actually been found to be a restorative element, that we feel better, we feel re-energized, we feel charged, we feel good. And so when we think about nostalgia, it is quite intricate in its design, mechanism, and impact on consumers. Let's keep going. Types of memories. We have a lot of different types of memories. We have episodic memories, personally relevant memories, such as the first time you played a video game or a video game console. We also have sensory memory, the information we have in our senses. This may be related to remembering how to manipulate video game controllers. Touch memory. We also have short-term and long-term. Short-term memory is important for as long as we need to hold on to the piece of information. You might be in the throes of beating Kingdom Hearts 3. I still have to play that game. And so when we think about Kingdom Hearts 3, you might invest 20, 30, or 40 hours into the game. For those few weeks or several months that you're playing the video game, sure, you have to remember the buttons. You have to remember where the worlds are. You have to remember where the bosses are. You have to remember where items are. But after that, you're probably going to let go of a lot of what you needed to remember in order to play the game. Long-term memory is the memory that's most precious to us. It allows us to remember the important things, to remember what is influential to us. Sensory memory is very, very key in long-term memory. If I asked you your favorite smell of cookies, what your favorite smell of cookies is, I bet it's linked to a relative baking them. I might even put money on that. We have a lot of love for people who take care of us and make us feel good. And we often create these relationships and create awareness of these relationships when we're younger. We begin to be able to differentiate among adults who we love and adults who we just know. And so with sensory memory, when your grandmother gave you that plate of cookies and warm glass of milk, it left an indelible impression on you. It was the first time somebody showed you love through food. Or maybe just through a dessert. And so sensory memory is very critical because when we touch something, or if we hold something from the past, like video game controllers, we're quickly whisked away to another world. Quickly whisked away. And so memory is very, very complex and really is based around our own experiences and how we experience them. Let's move along. Nostalgia, memory, and learning in Disney Interactive. Now, with Disney Interactive, we can see here that with a lot of these different video games, and I implore you to look up Disney's Castle of Illusion, 1989-2013, and Disney's DuckTales, 1989-2013, you'll notice the video gameplay is unique. The video gameplay is very much linked with the older version. And so the modern video game is very similar to the older version. Why? Because they want to help consumers recall sensory memories that are embedded within long-term memories. So that people feel better, so that people feel good, so that people can remember how to play the darn game and feel good about it. What's likely happened between 1989 for a 5-year-old in 2013? What's likely happened in his or her life? Well, it's 24 years. Chances are that little boy or girl is an adult, maybe with children. And what better way to dive into what mommy or daddy grew up with than to play along with your children and to kind of go back and see the game through their eyes. Boy, Disney knows how to market, don't they? And so it creates a really holistic familial experience as well as familiar for consumers who can now play with their children. And it creates kind of a tertiary video game experience. It's very different to have a 35-year-old play video games. It's not something we've seen before. The last 60 years, we've seen 30-year-olds watch television. We've seen 30-year-olds watch film. We've seen 30-year-olds listen to the radio. The average age of a video game player today is about 33 years old. So we've never seen this before. This population continues to play video games. Something that used to be a children's toy is now still being played. And so because of this unique demographic and this newness around it, there's something to be said for being able to market to this demographic effectively. Let's keep going. Nostalgia and learned behavior. Nostalgia can drive down consumers' interest in acquiring money, making them more generous, and positively impact their proclivity towards spending more money for products. And so people are feeling more generous, they're feeling more charitable, and they are more interested in spending more money for products. Most people, and this has been found time and time again, will believe older brands are better than newer brands. And all of this is relative. If a new kind of Facebook or Spotify comes out, many of us would say, well, Facebook and Spotify were here before them, and they're going to long outlast these new social media and music streaming brands. We tend to have a proclivity, a predilection, toward simply favoring brands that we're most familiar with, that we connect to, that we feel familiar with. Nostalgia is a very, very powerful marketing tool. Let's keep going. Due to proper branding, whether it be through nostalgia, whether it be through keen brand management, we know that brands allow for product line extension. Sega has pushed its star character Sonic into several Nintendo Wii video game consoles. So it's been pushed into Mario and Sonic at the Olympics, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Sonic and the Black Knight as well. And so Sega has exploited Sonic time and time again, pushing it as a line extension, creating new Wii video games around Sonic. Why? Because in part, Sonic is nostalgic. Sonic has been with us for about 30 years now. And he's left an incredible impression on many of us who have disposable income and can purchase games. Let's keep going. And finally, brand awareness. Brand awareness is absolutely critical when we think about how we recognize and recall brands. These two elements go into learning and memory. Remember, we need to remember brands to remember them at all. There needs to be a brand, some sort of symbol or logo or slogan, so that we can remember something about those brands. Brand recognition incorporates recognizing Electronic Arts, Nintendo, and Activision logos. Brand recall considers thinking about Madden Football 2019 when the sports video game category is mentioned. Oh, if I'm thinking about sports video games, I'm immediately going to recall Madden Football 2019. During gameplay, consumers are inclined to recognize familiar brands. And so we are inclined to recognize familiar brands, logos, and other things that we've learned. Nostalgia really does help us imprint, embed, encode, enshrine, cement certain brands that touch us at our very center. Nostalgia is a very powerful weapon, tool, and marketing device when we're trying to cut through competitors and trying to have a unique value proposition for consumers. The video game industry right now is seeing some sort of boom in retro gaming. After all, it's been about 30 years. And so if it's been about 30 years since video game consoles took off, a lot of those children and teenagers growing up are now in their mid to late 30s and early 40s and maybe very well eager to share the same experience with their children. Additionally, they no longer have to ask their parents if they can buy a new console. Well, that's all the time we have on Late Night Learning. As always, keep laughing and keep learning.